In this episode of Athletic Training Chat, we have Krystal Tyree. Krystal did join us on our diversity roundtable discussion. We've been trying to get this to work ever since, but finally got to connect and sit down and talk about being a mom in athletic training and also just going back and continuing to learn and discuss and listen on the topic of diversity and race in athletic training. So it was great to finally catch up with Krystal and get this episode, and we really think you'll enjoy it. As always, we are powered by Mueller Sports Medicine. Please give them a shout out if you are looking for anything in sports medicine. Again, ideas, whatever it may be, they are willing to listen. They're doing a lot to reach out to the athletic training community, to get feedback, to make sure that they are providing what we need to do our jobs the best we can. Without further ado, enjoy this episode. Episode of Athletic Training Chat. We are on with repeat guest Krystal Tyree. Krystal was on our roundtable on race and diversity in athletic training, and we had been meaning to do a follow-up shortly thereafter. And I'm pretty sure we had something scheduled, and then my daughter decided to come a week early, and it just threw everything that week out the window. But took us till December 20th is when we're recording this to get back on. But there's plenty of good reason for that. Not so much from my end because we haven't really had sports, but Krystal has been very busy. And that's one thing we're going to highlight big time is being a mom in athletic training, especially at the high school level, which I can only imagine how busy that is. And I don't know that I could do high school athletic training. That group is unreal on how you can balance life with the amount of things that happen. Before I keep going, I want to turn it over to Krystal to just fill us in a little bit of background, and then we'll jump right into it.
Yes, so my name is Krystal Tyree. Currently an athletic trainer in the secondary setting in Houston, Texas. This is my second high school job in Texas. I just got here 2 years ago. Before this, I worked at another high school. And then before then, I was an athletic trainer in Mississippi for an outreach for a PT, a physical therapy clinic. I did my undergrad at Southwestern College in Winfield, Kansas, graduated in 2010. After that, I moved to Commerce, Texas, where I was a graduate assistant athletic trainer there. I worked women's soccer and cross country and track. And then I finished up early in December, moved to Dallas for a couple of months, did some contract, and actually worked club volleyball with my roommate for a couple of months. And then finally got a job in Mississippi, worked there for about a year. And then that's when I worked on my teaching certificate because I knew I eventually wanted to get back to Texas. And that was a big thing that they wanted was you to have your teaching cert. So I worked on that when I was in Mississippi, got a job. Actually had applied for another job in the same school district, but they had already hired someone. But the person still reached out and was like, another school district is looking for an athletic trainer. Would you still be in it? Or another school was looking for an athletic trainer. Would you still be interested? So I was like, yeah. I actually had that year, I was flying out of Dallas to go to NIT. It was in Vegas. And so they had called me when I was in Vegas and was like, hey, could you come down for an interview? So luckily that I flew out of Dallas, I flew back into Dallas and drove to Houston for the interview, and then had the interview and then drove back to Mississippi. So it was just crazy how that all worked out. And then about 2 years ago, not 2 years ago, God, I feel like it's 2 years ago, 4 years ago in 2015, I decided to apply for the DAT program at the University of Idaho. I had no idea what I was getting into. But I did it, stuck it out, very hard, very challenging. Actually, graduated in 2017 from the DAT from University of Idaho. Go Vandals! So and now I'm just working as an athletic trainer. Um, I had my baby girl about a year ago, December 3rd. I had actually found out that I was pregnant and I had just got a new job. So I was like, great. So yeah, and so I had her, and we've been living in Texas or living in Houston, doing our thing.
Are you utilizing that teaching certificate at all, or are you strictly just
Yeah,
athletic training?
yeah. So I am utilizing it. So when I first got my teaching cert, I did health, and I was able to start off with health, and then crazy enough, I did health, and then they wanted me to teach health science at my old school. So I was I was just started the DAT program, and I was teaching a new course. So it
Yeah,
was it
no big
was
deal.
yeah, it was so crazy, and it was actually another certification. It was a different like I don't know specialty or whatever you call it. Can't even think of it off the top of my head right now. Um, and so I did health science, and then after that, I did med term um, for a couple of years. But at my current place, I'm just doing sports medicine. And with sports medicine in Texas, you don't necessarily have to have a teaching cert. You can be an athletic trainer and teach it, but they want you to go through this course, which is done through TSATA. It's a sports medicine course that kind of certifies you to teach sports medicine. I never did the course, but since I am an athletic trainer and I have my teaching cert, I can teach that.
Gotcha.
Um, so right now I'm just teaching two sections of sports medicine.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So we reference, I'm only 5.5 months into being a parent, um,
Hmm.
and an athletic trainer, but I honestly haven't had any sports to deal with, which was going to be its own unique thing this fall.
Right.
Some people have asked me, and I say I honestly have no clue.
Mhm. Yeah.
Really haven't gone through it. I know I've gotten to see my kid more because I've been having to work from home and whatnot. But
Hmm.
how has year one gone? Um,
Um,
Working in the secondary high school, the high school setting, and being a new parent.
Honestly, I mean, it's gone better than expected. So when I came back from maternity leave, I was just 4 weeks in and then we got shut down. So I really didn't get to experience that very beginning of it
Mhm.
because, we got shut down and I was able to spend like 6 months with her at home. So I was very lucky with that. Um, Plus I saved on daycare costs. But year one, I had a bit of anxiety about it because I'm a planner and I know that like schedules can get changed and there can be last minute scheduling conflicts. But it definitely went better than expected. I'm just gonna be transparent. I'm a single parent, so that in itself is a challenge because I don't have the support of the other person per se. But I have my village of people, and they are amazing. They're great. It really does take a village, and you need that village to help you get through it. Because if it wasn't for them, I probably would have quit. Like there was no way I could do it.
Sure.
My parents live in Arkansas. My closest relative is in Dallas. So I had to like one of my friends said FTSOS, you got to figure that out. So that's basically what I did. I found a really good babysitter. Luckily, she was actually a former student of mine
Okay.
um, when I got there my first year, and she was just amazing. Like she'd always check on me like when I first had her, and so she had watched her one time when I had a game when I came back, and I was like so scared. I was like, "Can you please watch her at the school? Because like I'm not ready yet." And so she did. She came up, she watched her, and so I just reached out to her again. Luckily, she's doing online schooling. She's still at home, so and she's been great in watching her and picking like meeting me at daycare and taking her back to my house. So it definitely went better than expected. I'd say the biggest thing is to make sure you have a good support system, and that your job understands like your situation. obviously with me being a single parent, if she gets sick, I'm gonna have to leave. Like there's nobody else. I had to do that on Friday. Um, and then just, I mean, my coworker is great. He understands. Um, yeah, so it went definitely better than expected. There were some stressful situations just because of like timing and schedule changes and like, oh God, like what am I doing? So, but like I said, I figured it out.
How has that gone? With working. I will be the first. I've never worked in a secondary setting, so I don't know how that necessarily goes. Working with coaches, and
hmm
obviously they change practices, but those change a lot of different things. I've only been in
hmm
a setting where seemingly it's what the coach just changes things on a whim, and then you're supposed to adjust, which
Right.
we've worked on in my role. But then we just had an episode a few ago with Nate Irvin, who
hmm
I thought this was really interesting in his setting in D3. Like he's completely on a scheduled basis for when he sees the student athletes, which
hmm
I kind of do, but we not always with our stuff. But I thought that was really unique. That might obviously not be feasible in the secondary setting, just because
Yeah.
schedules don't exist. Like gaps in schedules don't exist because they're in school pretty much all day. Um,
No, they do not.
but how has
um,
that gone? Working with coaches and administration. It's like you had referenced a coworker that's really helpful, but I've did it come to like setting some boundaries? Is it just like, hey, like I need X amount of time, if at all possible, to
right.
change?
So we're real like with our scheduling. Luckily, there's three of us, or two and a half. I guess you can say the other person is at outreach. So we do really good with like planning ahead and planning the schedule. And I don't know if there's like a specific policy in place, but um, we've never really run into any issues with like last minute schedule changes. We use a calendar. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. It's called Sports U, and we also use Rank One. So anything that gets changed has to like we have to see that email. We have to see that it's done. Um, and it's usually, I mean, it's not really. I've never had an issue where it's been like last minute. Like
Sure,
oh, the venue's changing to here versus being away. It's usually a couple days ahead. So we get a pretty good heads up for the most part. I think one situation, so this the week after Thanksgiving was my daughter's birthday. It was on December 3rd. Our coach, we didn't have it. Well, we did have a game scheduled, but it was canceled. But it was going to be that Friday anyway. And so that Thursday, I had planned to get my daughter's pictures taken and to spend the day with her. I was going to take a
mhm.
half day. And our coach scheduled a game on that Thursday. And I was like,
Oh, good.
oh God, great. So I was flipping out. Well, I was just like, I already scheduled pictures. Like I already planned to take it. Like it was my daughter's birthday. And they're big on like family first. So I knew they wouldn't have an issue. But to me, like as an athletic trainer, you feel guilty because you're like,
Yeah,
like we have a varsity football game, like yeah, I gotta work. So um with that, luckily, like I said, we have another AT in outreach. And so I just reached out to him and I was like, hey, like I had already planned to have my daughter's picture taken that day and to take a half day. Would you mind helping cover, the varsity football game with my coworker? He was like, absolutely. So, and I told him, I was like, I can take basketball from you. And, it worked out. But, there's never really been a situation to where, there's a conflict, and we weren't notified about it. We we rotate, like one person will stay late for practices, one person will get to go home early. So we do a really good job with that. As far as with athletics, of course, athletics is every period. We teach, like I teach two courses and he teaches one. So there we don't really get a conference period. I don't know if you understand conference period, but it's like a planning period.
okay.
My conference period is actually boys basketball is going on. So I mean it's not a big deal to me, but like, it's a law that you should have an uninterrupted conference period. So but we do good with it. I mean, we manage it pretty well. Um, so last year wasn't too difficult because obviously we didn't have the pandemic, but with this year we got to spread out athletic periods to make sure there's enough
Sure.
room for everybody. So there is an athletic period every period. Um, but we have treatments in the morning. Our school starts at 7:15, so we'll rotate every other week. Like 1 week it'll be my morning to show up early, and then next week will be my coworkers. And then after school we'll do treatments until like 5:30 or the end of practice. So there's not really major issues with that.
Nice. I know that was one question I was curious as to your take on, and I've heard this and seen it. Does the profession lend, especially in the collegiate and secondary setting, lend to being a mom in athletic training?
Yeah.
Whether, and I say it in quote, if people are just listening and not watching this, traditional in quote
Right.
roles and things. Obviously, it doesn't apply with you in terms of being a single mom, but
Yeah.
I know I've had a coworker who, not because of this, but because of the demands, has moved over into just academic, much older, but that is ultimately going to make it easier for her. I know, even I was was stressing about it. What it's going to look like, but between every football game and track meets and the whole bit. So, what are your thoughts?
With
Just, is it possible to maintain, the traditional role, be in that traditional setting in athletic training and be?
I think it's possible. It just depends on what your surroundings is like. Like you could I looked up and I have a great administration staff. There was a reason I got that job and I was pregnant. It's been great for us. But I could say that if I was still pregnant at my previous job, it would not have been the best situation for me. And I probably would have left. Just went, a different route just because I just knew it wasn't the best setup. But I think it just depends on what your goal is. And, for me, it was about, proving and showing that my daughter, I could still do this. I didn't, you know, I'm her role model. So I want to, show that I can still work. I can still be an athletic trainer. Like I said, you just have to have that support system. And if that's something you want to do, if you want to stay in athletic training and you want to stay in that setting, then figure out how to do it and just continue doing it. But I mean, it just all depends on what situation you're in.
Sure.
I don't think that you necessarily have to leave the profession altogether when you become a mom. You can go to a different setting with better hours. You can go into teaching. You can go to an industrial setting, physician center. I don't necessarily think you have to leave the profession. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused about or, oh, I need to leave. No, you don't have to leave the profession. You can still do athletic training and be a mom, I believe. But when you are trying to look and find another setting with better hours, don't go into an employer and say, oh, I became a mom and I want better hours. Don't say that to them, because that's not, something that's, say that you are wanting to be challenged, or say that you want to have a better work-life balance, or you're looking to use your skills in different areas.
Sure.
No, don't say it's because, I want better hours or something like that. So yeah, I definitely think it's manageable and doable.
Awesome. What else about being a mom and an athletic training that I haven't asked you, because I've only coming from it from one side of the coin.
Right. Gosh, I mean, it is hard, especially on those bad days when, you're dealing with a non-compliant athlete, or an athlete that has an attitude, or
Sure.
a parent that's yelling, it's you're like, why am I putting up with this when I can be home with my child? I mean, those days go through your mind, why am I listening to you? I can be at home with my child right now. So, but yeah, and then, I mean, if you have an opportunity to bring your child to work, bring her to work. Obviously not right now because there's a pandemic. And, let your coaches help, let your coworkers help, let your students help. They want to. The other day I was at a football game, crazy as it seems, my head football coach, his wife was actually pregnant at the same time I was and had her child a week earlier. And, the other day she had asked me, she was like, why don't you bring her to the football games? I'll watch her. And I'm like, are you sure? She was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. Like, I never took her up on the offer, but just things like that you don't think about. But like, obviously people understand, like, and they're willing and wanting to help. So don't be afraid to ask for help, because that's how it was before I had a child. I never wanted to ask for help. But now I can't be like prideful. It's just me. So I have to ask for help.
Can understand that, most definitely.
Yeah.
Shifting gears just a tiny bit.
Mhm.
Actually didn't have this on the list, but since you brought up your DAT,
Mhm.
just curious, and I've asked this for everybody, what drove you to go and want to get a DAT? I think you're the first person we've talked to with the DAT from Idaho. We've got it from
Mhm.
Still and a few from
Right.
Indiana State. But
Right.
just curious, A, why the DAT, and then kind of B, like DAT versus PhD, other than it's
Right.
like you can get the DAT done a little quicker, which sounds really appealing at times.
Mhm.
Just curious.
Sometimes. So I've always wanted to get I always wanted to go to the end. Like I always wanted to get a post-professional degree.
Sure.
I just didn't know how, because obviously I needed to work. And I think I may have was at NATA and signed up for something, and they sent out those emails or whatever.
Yep.
And so I got the email from them and I looked into it, and it was doable as to I could still work, only required to be in Idaho for 4 weeks in the summer. I was like, oh, that's easy. So yeah, I just went ahead and applied for it and got accepted. So yeah, it was a very hard time in my life. But after I finished the DAT program, I felt like a better clinician. Um, with the DAT, it also opened up, my interest in entrepreneurship. We didn't really go into that in the DAT program, but
Mhm.
just the different tools and different, treatments and stuff that we learned kind of opened up, my idea of going into um, business as an athletic trainer. I've always said that like the position I want isn't out there, so I have to create it.
Sure.
So yeah, that's kind of how I got interested in entrepreneurship. The DAT had you thinking outside the box, and so yeah. With the DAT, a lot of people get it confused because each program is different.
Mhm.
Yes, it's a clinical doctorate, but we did as much research as it with the PhD, as if you were going for a
Sure.
PhD. I think now they may have two different avenues. You can go the DAT route or you can do the PhD route. I'm not quite sure. Um, but yeah, one of the biggest reasons I did it was just because I was still able to work. They require you to have a clinical residency, which could be the place to where you work.
Okay.
And so I did my research at not my school now, but my previous school. Sorry if you hear my daughter, she's in there crying. So yeah, it worked out great. I met a lot of amazing people there, and we still keep in touch today.
Has it benefited you in your role just
Um,
because of having the elevated degree?
I don't think it has benefited me that much other than maybe a salary increase.
Sure.
I haven't really used it much other than what I've learned as far as like treatment and the way I approach my clinical practice.
Gotcha.
And people ask me like, what do I plan on doing? I honestly don't know right now. I had a child, so it has been in the back of my mind. Maybe I'll use it in the, huh?
And being in a pandemic, I feel like all future plans kind of get thrown into.
Right. So maybe I'll use it in the future. I'm not looking to get into academic just yet. I do some adjunct,
Mhm.
but I enjoy the secondary setting, and like I said, I also want to try to venture out into the entrepreneurship side too. So hopefully it'll help me there.
What is that? I mean, entrepreneurship is honestly, it's something we've had a couple people on for. We've got another one coming this, well, it'll be the week of the holidays by the time this comes out, so people can go back for it.
Yeah.
What do you see you wanting to do in the entrepreneurship realm? Because it's always been something that's fascinated me. I personally don't know if I have the stomach to make the jump.
Right.
But I applaud anybody that is, and I'll always like hearing the ideas. Obviously, you don't
Hmm.
have a business plan or anything, but just where do you see like entrepreneurship and AT and your
Yeah. Well, right now I have so much experience like teaching and
Mhm.
just with adjunct with high school, with, educating coaches and CPR. So my idea, or in a perfect world with me, is like develop a company to where I go out and teach different things like CPR. And I don't know if anybody's ever heard of, I don't know if you heard of Rod Walters. I hope you have, but he's an educational consultant and he
Okay.
actually investigated the death of Jonathan McNair in Maryland. And
Okay.
so it's kind of similar to what he does, but not, I don't know if I'll be up to that caliber, but obviously just go out and, evaluate people's EAP plans and make sure everybody's CPR certified. And, if they're not, then teach CPR and go over your EAPs and emergency action plans. Just because you never know. People don't talk about EAPs and emergencies a lot, but it can happen, and you want to make sure everybody's prepared. And then also just do some athletic training stuff, like with specifically like physically active individuals, but not athletes. So people who are, work out in the gym or who are, physically active, your marathon runners,
Mhm.
your forgot what you call them, but those people, be available for
Your
them. Your what?
your weekend warrior.
Yes, weekend warriors. That's it. Weekend warriors. Be available for them as well, because I think they need an athletic trainer as well.
No, that sounds awesome. You'll have to, again, we're having this conversation before the episode's released, but it'll come out afterwards. We've got one coming up that they're in the thick of trying to set up something very unique, like I think somewhat what you're referencing in terms of the care of the
Hmm.
everyday athlete kind of thing.
Hmm.
We're trying to work through some of the legal and logistical um,
Right.
difficulties that come along with that. And I think the
Hmm.
idea of like, that consultant role, I know for us,
Yeah.
we always had the stuff and it was in our policies and procedures, but then our exercise science department had Doug Casa from Corey Stringer Institute
Hmm.
do a guest lecture. And, I don't know that he actually intended to do this, but good Lord, just scared the crap out of me in a really good way to like
Hmm.
fully jump into our stuff and be like, okay, this needs to be so much better and we need to
Yeah.
go through. And, obviously everybody was certified in CPR, but, pushing for more AEDs,
Hmm.
doing everything, having more than just like, here's how you get EMS to you and all that.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that could be super useful. And it's the whole,
Right.
pay salaries and do this stuff instead of settlements kind of concept.
Right. Exactly.
Um, if you're open for it, I know one of the other topics we were going to talk about, which is originally how we connected,
Hmm.
on the topic of diversity and inclusion
Hmm.
in athletic training specifically, but even beyond that, have had some great follow-up conversations with and Mercedes Himmons, and really got into that. And so, would love to just continue that discussion if you're up for it.
Sure.
I know one of the questions I had is, what barriers do you see existing for, minorities and persons of color in getting into athletic training?
Yeah. So the obvious barrier is financial cost of education. Um, when I was, applying for schools and colleges, I had no idea about loans and, all I knew was like apply for FAFSA. Like I had no idea what interest rates and all that stuff. So the financial cost of education is very expensive. And I think for minorities and people of color, our financial literacy is not the greatest. And so that could be a barrier to getting into athletic training. And then more specifically, I think that, and I'm probably going to ruffle a little feathers here, but like, now that athletic training has transitioned into a master's degree, you're looking at 4 years of school versus 5. So obviously that's going to be more cost for you. Um, and then also underrepresentation. Most accredited programs are at PWIs. We've got one accredited program out there at a HBCU, but most programs are at publicly white institutions, and so there's not a lot of people on campus that are going to look like you.
Sure.
And so the programs that do have, a lot of minorities and people of color are the programs that are in your diverse areas, like University of Houston MAT program. They have a lot of minorities and people of color in their program, but of course, you're in Houston, so but most programs aren't like that. So there's that underrepresentation at schools. You walk around and most people think you're an athlete, so which is not the case. Again, with that not being supported by your academic institute, not everybody person on campus is an athlete. There's not other support systems out there on campus for people of color and minorities. So you don't have that. And then the lack of family support. A lot of families that come from, people of color, minorities come from families that don't know what athletic training is. Luckily, my parents, I think they were kind of knew what athletic training was, but for the most part, parents and other family members don't know what athletic training is. And, their main concern is this going to make you money when you graduate college? So I think those are some of the barriers that exist to minorities and people of color.
I know the next question was, what opportunities can be created? And, you gave a big list, and you kind of answered it already, but I was going to ask you, I think the transition to a master's is ultimately becoming it's another potential hurdle or, point that could be a barrier. Because like you said, I think, for our setup, it's actually another 2 years of school because we're post, I don't even know if it's technically professional, whatever the master's degree is designated as, but that's what we're at. But thoughts on, other opportunities and things that can be done to help change that?
Well, of course, scholarships specific to athletic training. There's scholarships out there, but you and I both know they pay for what, a book. So
I just applied for a few in my own going back to school, and it's even the dread of, I've written a 150-page policy and procedure thing. What's a 3-page scholarship application? But man, still didn't want to do it.
Right. It only pays like what, $500 to $1,000. Like
said, so we'll
yeah.
even get considered.
Right. So like scholarships that are specific to athletic training, you have your scholarships out there that are like STEM or mathematics or, biomechanical engineering. And there's some that are specifically for minorities and people of color, but there's not one that is big enough to pay for school all 4 or 5 years. And that's specific to athletic training. And to me, that's a problem because you have all these big companies out there and vendors that athletic trainers do business with. How come they can't provide a scholarship for somebody like J&J or Gatorade or Powerade or Medco or Normatec? Like somebody could fund or they could get together and fund a couple of scholarships for somebody. So I just think that, there should be better scholarships out there. Paid internships, I think, would help. Right now there's, people want to do those internships that are with the NFL, but we need other internships that are in other settings like military, NASA, industrial, clinical, like physicians practice. Because the main ones right now and there's probably some out there, and excuse my ignorance if there is, but, other internships other than the NFL, other than professional settings, everyone's not interested in the NFL. Everyone's not interested in professional settings. They want to go work for NASA, or they want to go work for NASCAR, or they want to be a physician, an athletic trainer, in physician practice. But there's not, yes, you do it in your clinical rotation, but other than that, that's it. So having paid internships in other settings. Am I echoing?
Nope, you're good on my end.
Okay. I don't know what happened. Recruitment, just like with college coaches, like they do with recruiting athletes, there needs to be recruitment with athletic training students to visit these inner city schools, program directors and visit these inner city schools and, offer to have them come visit, pay for the visit, just like athletics would do. More exposure, more service projects done. There's one done um, during NATA with EDAC, but I think they also should be done at regional and local levels. And then this last one, it got me thinking because I had went to a junior college, and when I went to a junior college, I was always interested in athletic training, but I ended up staying an extra year because I tore my ACL. But when I transferred to a 4-year, I had to start over. So instead of like transferring into a program, I had to like start like level 1 as an athletic training student.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if we can get JUCOs to partner with, accredited 4-year schools, or if you go here for 2 years, then you can enter into our program as a level 2 versus a level 1.
Sure.
So that way they're not in school additional years.
Right.
Also maybe offer classes, the same classes at the 4-year in an athletic training program, offer them at a 2-year program at a discounted rate. And so that way they don't have to take it, at the 4-year, and they've already taken it and got the cheaper price. So maybe Katie could do something, I don't know, partner with the JUCO.
Right.
That way they can also build up their retention of getting students in that program. Like
Sure.
you're guaranteed to get into our athletic training program if you go to this 2-year school. So maybe something to think about. But yeah.
Asking this one, it's selfishly asked, but I think it'll apply for a lot of people. Obviously, not diverse. I'm talking about myself. Pretty much the epitome of, and I don't hesitate to say this, of white privilege when it comes to being, a white male. But I'm not in a very diverse part of the country. Definitely not in our own state. That being said, this is where I'm currently at, and so we talked a little bit about this on the round table, but again, just, for more insight on it, like how it could, in my role, potentially help do that. Like, we don't have an overly diverse staff, or not overly diverse program yet. It's still very small as we're in the process of, really building up in that transition. But obviously, along with what you've mentioned with reaching out, actively recruiting, what other things do you think would help with that to help someone who would be a minority on our campus in our program feel that that's something that they might want to actually be a part of still?
Be a part of the athletic training program?
Yeah, we're as an example, where I'm currently at.
Okay. Geez, that's a good
That was
question.
a lot of rambling.
It's okay. I mean,
because that would be even the same thing if I had a position open and reached out to you, not that you would want to move up into the winter, which would be its own argument to get somebody that's lived in Houston up here, but like helping ensure that this would be something that you would want to do, even though that it's not, we're not that diverse yet.
I think as long as you make them feel safe, and you do explain to them like, hey, like just be honest and upfront, like this is our initiative, we really are trying to increase diversity, and then just make them feel safe and comfortable, give them the resources that you do have, and then, even ask them to help build whatever it is, like the diversity you want. Because then they could potentially bring other people up,
Sure.
Bring students. Because, I went to PWI. Well, it was a small school, but mainly.
Range.
And so I think what attracted to me was there was another athletic training student in the program that was Black, but also a part of the vice president of like student affairs was Black, and then there was other Black faculty.
Mm-hmm.
So and I felt safe. But I think that's one thing, is that making sure that person feels safe and that there are other minorities on campus.
Sure.
And I think also when I was in school, we developed the Black Student Union. And I don't know if that's something you have or like, but figure out ways to develop support and resources for that person. And then if there's not any, then be like, hey, you can come on and help us build that.
I think that sounds good, because I know one of the big conversations we had with Mercedes was, diversity is one thing, and then the inclusion aspect is a whole other thing, that it's not enough to just go to diversity. Like that, you gotta let everybody come to the table and be at that.
Right.
And make it happen. So,
right.
Anything else around diversity and inclusion that we haven't touched on?
Not that I can think of. No.
Well, are you good jumping into those last AT Chat 5 questions then?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. Where do you see the athletic training profession going in the next 5 to 10 years?
The next 5 to 10 years. Well, hopefully, I'm really big on like emergent settings. Like everybody knows an athletic trainer's at a school, at a hospital maybe, or in the professional setting. But I'm big on emergent settings. So I'm hoping that like it's pushed more, it becomes more common to see an athletic trainer at an emergent setting. It's not atypical. Also, more people of color and women on the national level and the regional level, and in levels of position and positions of authority and decision making. Wrote some down. More in diversity and inclusion, obviously in general. More DAT programs, I think, and then hopefully PhD programs that is specifically to athletic training.
Sure.
That's one thing I didn't touch on when I talked about the DAT, because a lot of people, they want to get their doctorate because they want to go into academics.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of institutions see, oh, you just have a DAT, so you can't teach with that. You can teach with a DAT, but they would much rather you have a PhD,
right?
For like program directors, but you can be a clinical instructor. So more DAT programs and hopefully PhD programs that focus on athletic training, but focus on clinical care and not just research with the PhD. So both. And then of course, more program directors with people of color, more people of color program directors, not just hiring those people of color in diversity and inclusion positions, but have them in those head positions and program directors. And yeah, so I had one more, but it like went over my head. I forgot. But yeah, if it comes back to me, I'll let you know.
Absolutely. No, that sounds good. If you could go back and give yourself some advice as a young athletic trainer, first, when would this occur within your career, and what would that advice be?
This would probably occur right when I graduated high school, maybe, or my first or second year of high school, but like be more involved, start networking early. I went to NAT my senior year of my senior year when it was in Philly. But don't be afraid to network, volunteer, reach out. I never knew about EDAC until I went to NAT, I think. And I don't know if it's my own ignorance or just not being educated on it in my program. Obviously, my program was, mostly white.
Yep.
But learn what's out there, learn what resources is out there for you. be ignorant to, you know, what's out there, because there's our resources out there. You know, you can't say you didn't know anything from your own ignorance. So educate yourself. Look into other certifications, especially while in college, that can make you more marketable, or
Yes.
that is beneficial to what you want to do and do with athletic training. Like, I wish I would have looked into other certifications like um, FMS or SFMA
Yep.
or things like that. Manual therapy, like, you just learn the basics in your program pretty much, or at least from my experience. It's probably better now,
Sure.
obviously, but you just learn the basics. You don't learn all the different types of manual therapy that's out there. So go out and get other certifications that's going to benefit you. And then I would have told myself to get my master's degree in something other than that's like health related or health performance related.
I'm
My
with
master's
you on that
degree
one.
in Yeah, my master's degree is in health kinesiology and sports studies, and I wish I would have gotten something totally that's not health kinesiology related. Maybe like a business degree. Probably would have been very fun for me because, you know, I was mainly focused on, you know, athletic training,
Yep.
but definitely get at something other than that could make you more marketable and make you take you to different ventures of athletic training.
Totally agree. I would have loved to have gotten that MBA instead of
Yeah,
an exercise science one. Uh,
right.
yeah, and then I on the certifications thing, totally agree. Kick myself all the time for not doing it, but also remember thinking back, like, man, that's a lot of money, which it was at the time.
Yeah.
But man, if you can figure it out, because maybe you don't go to the bars 3 nights a week, you just go once a week, and you throw
Exactly.
away some of those things. Like, it is so worth it, especially early in your career when you
Yes.
got to have something that sets you apart.
Mhm.
You just don't have the experience to do it yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally agree. No, that's extremely hard to say. Uh,
Mhm.
but man, I say the same thing to every student I have. Find the cheapest one that interests you and go get it done.
Right, exactly, and they may even give you a discount because 'cause you're still a student, so
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't need to go and do the $2,000 one. Like, you can find the ones for 300-400 bucks, which I know still sounds like a lot of money, and it still
Mhm.
is for me. Like, I still hesitate, but
Yeah,
it is so worth it, especially early on.
right.
What has been the most influential resource you have found in your career?
The most influential resource, honestly, this is gonna sound so cliche. Like, if you would ask me this, like, in June, I would have said this, but now I say Twitter. Like,
You're not the first
it's
one.
like, I mean, I wasn't, like, a Twitter fanatic, like,
Either.
a couple years ago, 2 years ago, but since this pandemic, yeah, it's so much knowledge, and there's so many great people on there, and they just spit gems and pearls, day in and day out, and gosh, you can find so much on Twitter these days, and of course you gotta fact check, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing the stuff, and yeah, so and I used to my Twitter used to be blocked, like, it was private, so you couldn't retweet
Mhm.
me, but, like, since I unblocked it, so, like, I could, like, yeah, so people can follow, they can DM me, they can, yeah.
Yeah. It's been I totally agree. Like, I mean, the podcast, sure, but using Twitter as a huge jumping off point
Mhm,
for that, like, the people I've been able to connect with since March,
mhm,
because of this, there's no way. There's no feasible way I would have ever been able to connect with the people I have and have
right,
enjoyed all of it, because
right.
I will continue to be in connection and wait till we can all
See
congregate.
each other, yeah.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
this
Yeah, I feel like I know everybody,
was
like, I'm like, "Yeah, I know that person," like, we talk.
oh yeah, just let me shoot him a DM. We'll get you in touch. No
Right,
worries.
right.
If you could change or eliminate one thing, could be a modality, a common practice, a mindset, or anything else in the field of athletic training, what would it be?
Well, I would eliminate all modalities. No, I'm just kidding. I think, and you see a lot of this
Combo.
on,
Yeah. If
what'd you say?
I could keep combo, I'm pretty much on board with you.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty much slapping a Band-Aid on, but anyway, not gonna talk about that. But I saw this a lot just on Twitter, um, but just being critical towards one another. I think we're stuck. Um, you're not ever stuck. Like, you just haven't found a different approach over your barrier, and be open-minded. Like, for example, ATs complaining about salaries and work-life balance. Like, if you don't like it, go find another job that appreciates you and that,
Yep.
huh?
That's
Yeah,
always right. It's a hard decision, but it's always the one you can make.
right. Find somebody that appreciates you and values you, that pays you well. That was my situation before I got the job that I was at now. Like, I did feel like I was stuck because I did apply. I started applying jobs 3 years before I got a job, and because I was just ready to leave, especially after finishing the DAT. Like, I felt like I wasn't being heard, that I didn't have a voice, that they were very resistant to what I was trying to do because obviously I got better after the DAT. I wanted to do more things, and I just felt like they were resistant to. So, yeah, just you're not stuck. Um, so go find where you're appreciated, and if you don't like it, like, figure it out. Another thing is, like, I think we are our own worst critics. So be open to change and criticism. A lot of people hear our tone and not the message, or hear the tone and not the message, coming from others, and I think we're quick to take offense.
Sure.
Um, and this is just what I see on social media. I mean, it may be different, and obviously texting and social media, you don't hear anything. So,
Going through
and
tech
then
can be pretty tough sometimes.
right, and then instead of rebuting someone's statement of why you did it or disregarding how they felt, ask them what they can do to change their approach and to not make someone feel a certain way. So, and this is just obviously what I said on Twitter, but
Yep.
I mean, but so those are some things I would change as far, and probably that's just in general, not even as an athletic trainer, like some words of wisdom.
Yes, given the world today, I think those are very good words.
Yeah.
Final question is, what does being an athletic trainer mean to you?
Uh, Being an athletic trainer, being an educator, a mentor, innovator, a safe space for all, a consultant, a voice of reason, an influencer, um, meteorologist, to swear, like, our coaches every 10 minutes. How much more time we got? Still got 30 minutes, coach. Yeah, person anybody can go to for advice, pretty much anything. Like, I work at a high school setting, and so one
Mhm.
of the things at you hear everything. You hear all the gossip, you hear this, you hear that, but the kids love you because they trust you and they know
Sure.
you're not going to tell anybody else, obviously, because you can't. You're just used to not, so yeah, that's one thing I do like about the high school setting. The kids keep you young, and you stay up to date on the current trends and
Right.
hot topics and stuff like that. So yeah, we're just really being an athletic trainer, just being really a jack of all trades. Like, you really got each healthcare skill of each healthcare profession.
I absolutely well said. I like the list. Thanks. No, I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
Um, Before we wrap up, if anybody wanted to connect with you or reach out, obviously you had mentioned that your Twitter is fully open. Where would be the best place to do that?
To
Just to
reach.
connect with you if they wanted to.
Oh, you can Twitter capital_KT. You can email me Tyree10@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, mostly Facebook and Instagram are pictures of my daughter, but you can always find me there. I mainly talk about athletic training on Twitter, though. I really don't post about athletic training on Facebook or Instagram. So
Same,
yeah,
same. Awesome. Well, I'm glad we finally got to do this, and
yes,
appreciate you taking the time.
yes, it's great.
Look forward to connecting in the future.
Yes, definitely.